So for today's video, I have a very chaotic hair makeover. So many cool women and people in general have been chopping their hair off both online and in my personal life, and I can't help it. I've been inspired. I've caught the bug to do the same, and yeah, so I'm chopping my hair off in this video. I had been growing it out and it was a bit messy and wild, and I chopped it a little bit a couple weeks ago just to give it a nice trim, and I did a fresh dye on it, but I'm just feeling a little unsettled and like I want to do more and play around a bit more. My hair does look cute when I style it if it cooperates, but most of the time it doesn't, and it is, pretty damaged from all the coloring and stuff I've been doing to it. So I just thought it would be about time for a fresh chop, mix it up. Why not? This is not my first rodeo when it comes to having a pixie cut. This will actually be my fourth time having one, I believe. The first video I actually ever posted on this channel was a pixie cut that I gave myself, so a little bit of a full circle moment here. But to start, I am sectioning my hair, which is, the first step to any hair makeover will be sectioning. I started with the shortest layer of my hair, which would be the bottom. I think it's easiest personally to work from the lowest layer all the way to the top of your head when doing anything, whether it's haircuts or hair coloring. I of course urge you to use real hair scissors when doing your hair and not, just some random craft or kitchen ones. It does matter when getting the right precise cut, and it does definitely impact your overall quality of haircut, what tools you use. My old shears were busted. They were, some cheap old dull ones I had, so I got some new ones. So you see the hair is falling off, super easily as I cut. But what I focused on first was getting the length shorter, obviously, and when you see me pulling out the pieces of hair, I'm actually cutting layers there. That is the easiest way to cut layers, is just to pull a section of hair out completely straight and just cut it straight. I was also going in with the shears and just cutting my little baby hairs at the bottom because I don't have clippers or anything. I did shave my neck later with a razor, which was a mistake because it irritated the crap out of my skin. Plus all the hair dye that comes later, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. You see me doing now is actually thinning up my hair. I am using thinning shears here. So overall the tools I'm using are pretty much just hair shears and thinning shears. I was really just going at it because I knew that that layer was going to end up being really short, so I wasn't too meticulous to start. When I initially start haircuts, I kind of just focus on getting the overall length to what I want, and then I work on refining things later. But I always recommend leaving a little bit extra hair than what you want to cut off, just in case you change your mind and then there's room to make mistakes later, so you don't have to, shave your head off. Well, your hair, not your head, but you get what I mean. And also, shaving your head is definitely a look, but that is not what we're going for today. So I just kept cutting away basically and thinning things out until I was ready to take the next layer down and then bring that up to the same length that I just did with that layer. Sorry if the language is a bit repetitious and confusing, but hopefully you understand what I mean because you can see what I'm doing on screen. I didn't really have much nerves before, but here is where I started to get, a little anxious that I was going to mess things up because the bigger cuts and chops were coming, those longer layers, those front pieces. I was pretty nervous about losing all of those to start. But once the hair started falling off, I just started getting more excited, and I could tell that it was a good decision because it just was looking healthier. You can see just how dull and bland and dry everything is, so I knew I needed this cut. You can see too where the color was fading and where some of it still was kind of saturated, so I just kept cutting and thinning things out like I did with the previous layer and got that up to the same length as that layer. Here I did start to mess up a little bit, but I was still pretty in control at this point, I would say. Throughout this haircut, for whatever reason, I kept continuously underestimating how sharp both sets of shears were. So there were definitely sections of my hair where I took bigger chunks out than I intended to, and I also took some length off shorter than I intended to because I'm used to my crappy hair scissors that I was using before today. But I'm pleased to say that I feel like I have, mostly salvaged what errors were there by the end of this process. The technique I used to get the hair shorter up front with those layers was to basically take the back of my hair and brush it forward, almost like doing a comb over or something, but you don't want to brush it too far. But to start, that is how I was getting those short layers in, so I could draw like a clear separation from the back of my hair to those front layers. The remaining process of the haircut was essentially bringing those back layers up shorter and then those front layers shorter as well. but I took my time cutting because I had to brush things a certain way, angle things a certain way. All around, I feel like this technique can be applied to pretty much anybody's hair, but I do want to say keep in mind your natural hair texture and the way that your hair tends to fall, because that should influence the way that you cut it. You don't want to do exactly what I'm doing. You want to see where your hair lays. So I took my time, playing around with that and seeing where things would be before I decided to go in with further cuts. And once I got the overall length to about my chin, that is when I started to go a little bit more aggressive with cutting in the back. I do regret some of my technique here. I think the thinning shears, I was going a little too hard with them, and I think I should have relied on the other set of shears a little bit more for this part, so I didn't end up taking like huge chunks out, which you will see. But after attacking the back of my head for a while with scissors, I then decided to move forward with the front and began cutting those longer top layers and pieces. The back layers are atrocious at this point in time of the haircut, but you can start to see that pixie cut take shape there. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, combing your hair forward is an important part of this haircut. You can't just like cut it to the side, which I think is kind of what I did the first time I attempted this myself. My hair does tend to part to the side no matter what I do. I always have more hair on the right side of my head, so I made sure to brush in that way to bring the bang in that direction and cut the layers in a way, that made sense with how my hair tends to lay and separate. And despite some of, my mistakes, I do think it was turning out really, really cute at this point. I was happy, and I kind of regret not staying with this length just because I think it's really cute. I like those kind of choppy bangs with, the longer pixie look. But alas, remember how I mentioned how sharp all the shears were? Yeah, so while I was trying to do shaping around my ears, as you see me doing now, I definitely took too much length off and I lost some of those, longer, kind of whimsical little pieces there. And the thing about me is, for some reason, whenever I'm panicking, like doing something, i.e., cutting my hair, there's a voice that's like, hey, you messed up, you're going too short, stop. But I just can't stop for some reason, and I'm like, no, if I cut here it'll look better, if I fix this it'll go better. And so I just like kind of kept doing that until I was like, oh my god, and I cut my hair shorter than I was kind of planning to. Once I lost like some of the longer pieces, I definitely panicked, and then I realized in the back I had taken that chunk out, and I was like, oh shit. So I had to fix all the crazy layers in the back. I just had to keep cutting to get it as uniform as I could. And then there was this, pretty clear line between the top layer and then the shorter layers. So I just had to keep cutting until it made sense, basically. You can kind of see what I mean in the mirror there, but basically I had to bring everything up like an inch shorter for it all to blend a little bit better because of some of the cuts and mistakes that I made. And then, of course, since I brought the back shorter, I had to then adjust like everything accordingly. Here is where I really start, hacking off the back of my hair, and then it just gets progressively shorter from here. But I just continued using the shears, cutting the hair around my ears downward at an angle. I felt like that was the easiest way to get it. Again, I didn't really like that shelf thing I had going on in the back, and then I noticed all these messed up cuts I did where some of the layers got very short, even around the side of my head they got pretty short. So I just went in with my scissors. I was cutting pretty freely because I like my haircuts to feel somewhat organic. Of course, I like it to look uniform and intentional, but I don't like to cut things too straight and purposely because I just feel like it feels a little bit more natural that way. But in case you, didn't realize this on your own, it's really difficult cutting your own hair, especially the back of your head when it is this short in a mirror. Even the lighting can kind of play tricks on you, and so you might think you're doing well, but then you move into a different light and you're like, ah, my god, what did I do? Needless to say, this happened a lot with me in the area of the back. It actually gave me nightmares thinking about it. I was like, wow, I'm really about to walk in a great clips with my tail between my legs. Like, please fix my haircut. But despite me losing all faith in myself, I persevered and I finished the haircut. And I don't think it turned out too bad. I might be bold enough to say that I think this turned out better than my first pixie cut did, actually. No, it is absolutely not perfect, and I did end up a bit shorter than I was intending, but all in all, I think considering I did this myself, I think it's pretty damn good. Minus that bald spot I gave myself, oh my god. Wow, so, okay. The next portion of the video is just honestly pointless, But I thought I would show you my terrible decisions and mistakes for entertainment value and content, so you're welcome. Oh my gosh, though, what a fail. So, I used the Streaks and Strands kit from Good Day Young, which I already had, so I didn't want to spend new money, and I knew I would have to stretch the product. Ideally, you want a full size bottle when doing anything, even if your hair is short. But the bleaching, as uneven as it was, wasn't really the worst of the problems here. What surprised me was that I just ended up not really fucking with the pink this time around, and it's weird because pink is usually a comfort color for me, but for some reason with this haircut in particular, it just wasn't clicking for me and I didn't like it, so I changed it. But before we get to that point, we'll walk through what was going on here a little bit. So, obviously, I'm in the process of bleaching my head at this very moment. As I already stated, I purposely used less product than what was, probably recommended for my hair, but I definitely encourage you to get all the necessary bleach and all of that if you're going to be lightening your hair because the more product you have, the better, more even result it will be. It just will. And while this could have lightened a lot worse considering the lack of product I really had on my head overall, it turned out, decently even. There were some brown patchy spots, but I was lifting a red dye, so it lifted how I thought it was going to lift and that was good enough for the pink dye that I was applying anyhow. Again, there wasn't, the full size bottle of product that I was working with, so I stretched the dye as much as I possibly could, but I did want to start with the back because that was an area of concern for me, getting that spot covered up all the way. Unfortunately, it didn't really cling to that all that well, but it did stick to the rest of my head pretty good. So I just rinsed this color out, I let it set for a little bit, and I thought about it before I decided what to do next. And overall, I just wasn't really happy with the results. It looks fine, it doesn't look bad at all. But I don't know, like I said, it just wasn't really clicking for me for whatever reason. I guess I'm just not in my pink era today. I wasn't a fan of all those roots and dark spots showing too, so I did get the idea to use some leftover Arctic Fox I had again. And I don't know how many times it's going to take for me to use Transylvania before I never let myself use it again because it is such a difficult dye to work with and to clean up generally. But nevertheless, I tried it anyways, and I see the vision. I think I had a cool idea going on here. I wanted to do like a black layer mixed with pink highlights coming through and like a pink bang moment. But the first go at it, the dye did not like cling onto my head super well. Granted, I did rinse it out pretty early, but I was avoiding, it getting too dark and inky. But as you can see, it clung on really randomly and weird, and it wasn't cute whatsoever. So I just went back in with the dye again because I was like, what do I got to lose at this point? So I tried another layer of it to see if I liked that better. I cleaned it up a bit, made it more dark overall, and here it is. It's better, but it's not great, is it? It's just okay. So it turned out a little purple, which is kind of cool. I like the pink coming through. Again, I think the idea I had was there, and I appreciate my creativity and efforts in these processes. By the end of this, I was losing my mind, and I just needed it to be done. And so I resorted to Old Faithful, long lost friend, permanent dye, more specifically permanent box dye. But I will say that I looked it up online, I ordered a specific one, I planned it out, I knew I wanted to go back to red, so that's what I went with, and I found like a decent ammonia free one, and I have to say it worked like a freaking charm. I was obviously having a lot of anxiety about it because I had already just lightened my hair, and so when you use permanent box dye, your hair is also getting lightened, but I knew that there was no way around this. I either had to go pitch black or I had to bleach it again, or I had to resort to permanent. So what I ended up doing was permanent because I was so frustrated at the end of this. I was like, I don't care. Like, it just needs to be on my head and it needs to stay that way so I don't have to change it again. And I thought, my hair's short, so it's not really like a huge deal to do this. Yeah, it'll be a bitch if I end up deciding to lift it later, but I don't really think that's going to be a thing. And honestly, I'll probably like chop off the dyed ends before I'll go through all of that. So for now, I'm just gonna let it be, let it hang out and grow and get a little wild, and then we'll revisit it in a few weeks, a couple months, or as long as I can leave it be or want to leave it be, whichever comes first. So one thing about permanent dye is it's like extremely easy to do. You don't even need to have bowls or brushes or anything really. You just mix it in the container, shake it up, and apply it all over your head. Hopefully not as messily as I did, but the process is about the same. Cover your head, dye it, wash it, and here here is the final result. Yes, did I just bleach my hair and dye it 3 times to get it to the color that it pretty much was before? Yeah, I did. I did that. Don't mind the little bit of bedhead I have sticking up that I, didn't feel like tending to, but I think this turned out pretty dang good. Despite, those uneven pieces in the back, I think that the dye covered it up nicely. And maybe I'm crazy in thinking that my hair has like actually grown in the past week, but I don't think it looks as bad. It doesn't look, as messed up back there. I don't think this looks like a horrible botched haircut I did to myself. I think it looks pretty cute. It did take quite a lot of work to get here and a lot of stress, maybe a few tears, but I think this is a result I can, live with and be happy with for a little bit. And, I'll probably go in professionally, get it cleaned up a bit. But for the time being, that concludes this video and hair makeover. So let me know what you think. Would you be brave enough to try a Pixie? Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.